Okay, it is 11:30. Good early afternoon, and welcome to Get Credentialed 2026, our last course of the day. We begin right on time around here. I'm Diane Michael with Callan Group Communications. Please forgive me about going through this again if you have been with us since this. I am here with my CAM partner and friend, Lindsay Lombardi, with Coastal Living Association Management and Dominion Management. Lindsay and I started Beyond the Boardroom about 2 years ago with a pretty simple idea: make quality education easier and more accessible for CAMs and board members for free. And looking at what we've built together since then, we're incredibly proud of where this program is going. Whether today was your first Beyond the Boardroom event or you're one of our Webinar Wednesday regulars, we thank you and welcome back. None of this happens without the industry professionals and association allies who are willing to share their expertise with us. I especially want to thank Martell and Ozem PA, whose support has helped make Get Credentialed and our expanded board member education possible with yesterday hosting over 900 course submissions, and today we'll probably reach around that same number. First, I'm going to put our CAM attendance verification and FAQ page into the chat after I end the introduction. Please bookmark this page. This is where you'll submit your attendance verification, and it also answers the most common questions we receive about the program, attendance, verification codes, credit submission, and DBPR information. Please review that page before emailing us or adding to the Q&A today. There's a very good chance your answer is already in there. I'll continue putting important links into the chat throughout the course so you don't have to go hunting for anything. Second, please take advantage of the education library again that I'll put into the chat. Beyond the Boardroom isn't just about the course you're taking today. We have a growing library of past educational programs from our association allies. And I want to encourage you to remember these companies when you're looking for vendors and requesting proposals for your communities. Most associations seek multiple bids. If one of our association allies has spent their time educating you and you believe they're qualified for the opportunity, we'd love for you to consider allowing them to be one of those bids. Please let them know Beyond the Boardroom sent you. And as we all know, budget season is upon us. That's one of the ways this entire free education ecosystem continues to work. Lastly, if Beyond the Boardroom has helped you, we'd love your help growing it. I'm putting our Google review link in the chat as well. If you believe this free education has been valuable to you or helped you to become a better CAM or to get your credits before the September 30th deadline, a 5-star review means a tremendous amount to us. We got a few yesterday and sincerely appreciate you taking the time to review about these free education courses. And referrals always matter just as much. Tell another CAM, tell a board member, tell everyone at your management company, or recommend us to a vendor to get them more access to CAMs and board members throughout the state of Florida. The bigger this community becomes, the more education and industry experts we're able to bring directly to you. Lindsay, will you please go over how submission process works?
Absolutely. So at the end of the course, we are going to give you all a link to go to our website as well as today's course name, Commercial Pool Forensics, and the code word, which I will save for the end. You must have the code word. Please do not take a phone call, go to the bathroom, do any of that at the end of this course. We will be providing that code word. You have to have it in order to get credit. There are no exceptions. Additionally, please make sure that you submit all of your credits for yesterday and today by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning so that we can get you all credit. We're going to be pretty strict on that deadline so that we can get everything submitted to the DBPR so you'll get your credits timely. And as always, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, everyone, if you have questions, put it into the Q&A. However, right now, I'm going to open the chat to everyone because we like to show our presenters where everyone is coming in from. So while I introduce Eddie, will you please go into the chat now and show us where you are joining us from? Our final presenter brings a unique perspective to the pool industry because he's seen it from nearly every angle: distribution, product sales, construction, maintenance, management, and now ownership. Eddie Bone of Azure Pool and Deck Design began his career in the swimming pool industry fresh out of college when he was recruited into Pool Corp's management training program. Over the next 9 years, Eddie built an extensive understanding of the business, working his way from Minneapolis to Warner Robins, Georgia, and ultimately to Southwest Florida, where he served as a branch manager and sales center manager for SCP. During those years, Eddie saw firsthand just how exciting a new pool or outdoor renovation can be, but he also saw the other side of the industry: poor communication, construction mistakes, unexpected change orders, and homeowners and commercial properties who didn't always understand exactly what they were getting until the project was already underway and too much money was spent. Eddie and his wife Kylie knew there was a better way to do business. Together, they founded Azure Pool and Deck Design, building the company around communication, transparency, thoughtful planning, and quality craftsmanship. They, just on a side note, they're an award-winning company. They are involved greatly in their industry through the Florida Swimming Pool Association. They're also involved in COMA, which is a community association manager organization, and they've just been really leading the way in the industry in their area for a long time now. One of the ways that they put that philosophy into practice is by creating 3D renderings of every remodel and new pool project, allowing clients to truly visualize the finished product before construction ever begins. Over the years, Eddie and Kylie have also built relationships with some of Southwest Florida's most talented and reliable commercial swimming pool professionals and subcontractors, creating a team focused on doing things the right way. Today, Eddie brings that experience beyond residential and commercial projects, sharing his industry knowledge with CAMs and board members to help them make smarter, more informed decisions about their communities. Welcome, Eddie.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Thanks,
morning.
everyone, for being here. I see we've got a pretty good mix. I see some people in my own backyard here: Northport, Naples, Sanibel, Sarasota, Pembroke Pines. Wow, we've got a pretty good mix. Anyway, I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day. I know some of you have been here since early this morning, so I'm going to try and make this an informative but also an entertaining presentation. Hopefully, I don't put anybody to sleep. There's going to be a lot of information that I go through in today's presentation, so please use the Q&A box if you have questions. I'm happy to answer them. And you may see some of those answers within the presentation itself. And then at the end, we'll go through the questions I've got and review any questions that you have. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is about pool forensics. You guys are all CAMs, so specifically, we're going to be talking about the things that you could experience within your pool area. A lot of the photos that I'm going to show you are going to be both residential and commercial, because at the end of the day, a swimming pool is a swimming pool, and the things we're going to see on residential, we can also see in commercial. I'm going to start today's presentation out. And Diane, I'm just making sure everybody can see my presentation. I've got it sharing.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
If you
so
want
today,
to go to the second page. Yep, perfect.
all right, today I am going to start with a short little video clip. Part of forensics that we do in all of our projects is called a pool shell inspection. We do this after the pool has been drained, but what it does is it brings to light a lot of the things that I will talk about later in my presentation, and a lot of the things that you may experience or see in your own pools, whether it be the one at your house or the one that you're managing in your community. So I'm going to go through I've got two little short videos of a pool shell inspection that we completed recently so that you guys can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was what I was saying earlier when we were talking about the dampness on the wall, that the calcium is a really good sign that water's been getting behind the finish. And then even after the pool drain, if you see those damp spots like we have here on the floor, you have all the moisture collecting around the cracks of the floor, and then you have the moisture collecting behind the wall. So I popped this wall.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video for a sec and provide a little context. So at this point in the project, We've met with our clients. We've walked through our scope of work. We've drained the swimming pool, and the dampness that you're seeing in the wall is actually trapped behind the finish. We drain the pool because a lot of things cannot be seen while there's water in the pool. Once the finish hydrates, everything becomes more uniform looking. But once it dries out, it will bring a lot of things to light. The spot that I'm hitting on the wall here is an area of delamination. I'll get into that more further in the presentation. What we were able to visually see when the pool was full of water was a calcium nodule that had been slowly growing on the wall of the pool. Each of those orange circles on the wall and on the floor are all locations where there was both a calcium nodule, and once it was drained, we found delamination. You can see as I break open these blisters that water has been trapped behind that finish. You can see this area on the right side where delamination has gotten to the point where we were actually able to physically put our fingers behind it and pull the finish off the wall. That's what's collected on the floor, is the finish of the pool. What you can see our supervisor doing there with the hammer is he's testing for delamination. When the hammer runs over the top of delamination, it will make a very hollow sound versus a solid sound on the areas where we've got a mechanical bond to the concrete shell underneath. And you can hear as we continue to go through this pool, the different sounds that the shell is making as we're hitting those delaminated spots and continuing to mark. You can hear him hitting one right there by the light. It almost sounds like a hollow core door. It would be extremely difficult for somebody to be able to do this type of inspection with water in the pool, mainly because when the water is in the pool, it's going to make a different sound. You can hear him hitting a spot on the floor right now. Here's the sad thing. This pool had been redone by another company 5 years prior. We were brought out because in the evening, when the light was on in this pool, you could see the various blisters with the light on the surface. And obviously, with the calcium beginning to come through, it became a major concern for the client. We perform these types of inspections on all of our remodels. We'll start with a leak detection. Leak detections are going to give me basically the health of your plumbing system and any visible leaks that a leak detector could see via a dye test. And then beyond that, we'll do plumbing inspections as well. And a plumbing inspection is once a leak has been indicated, we will pressurize that line to begin looking for the location of that leak. This particular pool had no plumbing leaks, so we're not going to dive into that because we're specifically talking about forensics on the shell itself and the finish in the tile.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna talk about structural versus cosmetic cracking. A structural crack would be anything in the concrete shell itself, something that would be a void that would ultimately need a structural repair. Cosmetic cracking are things like spider cracking, shrinkage cracking. Things like that are pretty typical of any cementitious surface. Obviously, if it gets out of control, things like that can then lead to more problems. But typically when that's an issue, there's more things going on than just the cosmetic cracking. They say, you know, there's three things you can count on in life, and it's death, taxes, and cracks in concrete. So, you know, seeing minor fissures and things like that in your finish can be normal. But what we have to worry about is when those begin to open up or they begin to present other things, like I mentioned earlier, calcium nodules, finish deterioration, etc. Things we look at: crack width, the direction of the crack. If there's any kind of patterns can indicate where a crack may have originated. Some cracks will begin in the actual decking of the pool, travel down the wall, down into the floor. And it really kind of depends on how the pool was constructed. So there's really a lot of analysis that has to go on when we're figuring out doing our CSI work in the pool. And yeah, sometimes cracks can indicate shell movement depending on where they are. And then, with all of our projects, we do a lot of documentation. As you saw in those videos were actually recorded and documented on this project. We highlight all of those areas that we found in the pool with orange paint. This is pretty typical. We do this so that when we find issues, we can present them to our clients and walk through what needs to be done, why we're doing it, and how it's going to be repaired. These are some photos of other pool shell inspections that we found. You can see deterioration on the floor. Diane, are you able to see my mouse circling around this?
Do it again. Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I can use this as a pointer. All right. Perfect. So yeah, you can see in the floor of this pool, there's a lot of deterioration in this corner. It's very possible that during the pool maintenance that the service company was directly pouring chemicals onto the floor of the pool, never brushing them. And those chemicals, a lot of them have differing pHs than the cement itself, so they can begin to deteriorate the surface. This particular one, there was some of that going on, as well as the client had an acid wash done on the pool, and the company that did the acid wash just didn't do a very great job. So it ended up etching a lot of the surface. You can see all the modeling and the discoloration in the finish. This particular pool that we're looking at was done about 2 months ago, but had previously been resurfaced about 3 years ago. And I mean, you can see what happens when a pool isn't properly cared for. This here was found during a pool shell inspection, and you can see the cracking here in the surface. This would be a cosmetic crack in the surface. What we have is the outer finish layer that's like a stucco on your home. It's not structural, and the tile on the top and the finish on the gutter. Many of you will recognize this type of design. You may have it in your own community. And then you can see behind that crack, what we were experiencing was delamination. Thankfully for this community, we were able to catch it early enough to where there wasn't more damage done to the actual structure. And that's where I was talking about how some of these cosmetic issues could lead to structural problems down the road, where if water is continuing to get behind this finish, particularly if it's unbalanced, now you're putting unbalanced pool water onto the concrete structure itself. This pool had a lot of things going on. We won't get into all of it right now, but I wanted to highlight this particular item. Again, here you can see these cracks that we have on the floor. We outlined them in orange. These were all previously repaired. These lighter spots here, and up into this corner, they had hired another leak detection company to come out and complete crack repairs. And crack repairs had been completed over this pool over the duration of 4 or 5 years. So the same leak detection company kept coming out, making repairs to these cracks and patching the surface and then moving on. Little did they know, and I truly believe it, they just didn't dig far enough into this project. There was a lot more going on with this structure than just cracking in the floor. My original concern was this pool is sitting on a hillside. As most of us are all familiar with our hurricane seasons here, We were thinking maybe there was movement of the shell causing these cracks. But after we drained the pool and we dug into it, what we ended up finding, and here's one of our layouts for this job. You can see the ones with what look like stitches on it. These were all previously done crack repairs. We found another crack that had not been repaired in the floor. And again, here, and more cracks that had been done. So you can see there's been, like I said, over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of repairs that has been done on this pool shell, which is a bit concerning. And really, I feel like should have been a red flag somewhere that after one crack repair is done, you're having to come back 6 months later to repair another crack. And a year later, you're repairing another crack. That is just one of those where there's smoke, there's fire. There was obviously something going on with this pool, and the leak detection company was more focused on repairing the crack than figuring out why it was cracking. Again, this was the same pool with water in it. So this is what you can see before we drain it. Again, these are those patches and repairs that had all been made over time. Ultimately, what we ended up discovering after the pool was drained and we opened up some of these cracks is the pool was never constructed properly. In our industry and as what's governed by the shotcrete industry, when you're shooting a swimming pool, you have to have complete coverage of the steel. Before these pools become giant concrete shells, we excavate a hole in the ground, we build a rebar skeleton, and the rebar skeleton is suspended above the dirt in the floor. The rebar cannot rest on the dirt. It needs to be suspended above the dirt on the floor enough so that we can get, at the minimum, 3 inches of concrete underneath that steel. And then you will have at least 3 inches of concrete above that steel. Now, that is bare minimum engineering standards. You can absolutely add additional layers of steel. You can make the concrete thicker. As long as you're following what the civil engineer has provided for you in his build plan for the pool, you should be fine. I can't speculate why, but this particular pool was found that the steel itself was resting directly on the dirt. So there was no concrete on the backside of the steel, which means there was nothing for the steel to bite into the concrete itself, which ultimately, as things move, which everything is going to be moving in the soil in Florida, it began to shift and crack. And there was nothing structural about that shell. It was literally a layer of concrete sitting on top of a layer of steel. So we saw a lot of this up front. We've been doing this for a long time. Diane kind of gave my history. So I've seen a lot. I still learn every day, but I have seen a lot. And when I was reviewing this with the client, he wanted to know what the worst case scenario was. And I told him, I said, well, worst case scenario is there's a chance that we're going to have to build a rebar skeleton within your existing pool shell on the floor and reshoot this pool. So at that time, we put together a price. This is in the beginning of our estimating process, and we provided him a cost to reshoot that floor. And ultimately, that's what we ended up having to do, was reshoot the floor of this pool. This was a community pool that we recently did a repair for down in Naples. Not a renovation we had completed. We'd been called in to just complete a repair. We do both full-scale renovations as well as small repairs. We know sometimes as CAMs, you just need to keep the pool open and keep the Department of Health happy. So there was cracking and pieces of brick falling off the wall of this pool that needed to be repaired. Once we removed the brick, we found out there was a whole lot more going on with this pool. As you can see here, there is actually a structural crack going through the top of the beam of the pool down into the water line. This crack travels down, as you can see here, and actually down into the waterline tile itself. Here's another angle. The crack then goes across the other side and back into the decking. Lots of cracks on this pool. And there were more sections of this pool where cracking like this was happening. This particular CAM didn't want us to do any kind of structural repairs at all. They were under budget to replace all the roofs within the community. So this wasn't really a project that they were looking to take on right now. So they had us put new brick back on the corner of the wall of this pool and 2 other areas, grout it and put it back together so that the community could continue to enjoy it. By no means do I endorse this type of repair, but I understand sometimes you guys are up against a wall. So you've got to do what you've got to do to keep the pool open, to keep the community happy, etc. This community, during this small repair process, also received an estimate from us to do these repairs down the road. I believe they're going to be doing a resurface with us next year. So at that time, we will address all of these structural cracks, and unfortunately with cracks, especially this wide, some of these are about an inch wide. Even these little Band-Aid repairs, I mean, they may last 30 days. I'm very much a person that likes to do things the right way the first time, but at the same time, we try and work within people's budgets and what they can afford in the moment. Again, here you can see a structural crack that begins in the deck, goes through the coping, and stair steps down the water line here. That crack is structural and was repaired with crack repair staples, anti-crack mesh, waterproofing, everything to stabilize the crack. This particular crack started from settling of the pool deck itself. The settling caused the decking to begin pulling down on the wall of the pool because concrete's very heavy. These walls of the pool were not designed to have that bare weight hanging on them. And ultimately, you can see what the result was. Other things you guys are going to find out in the field. And what I'm going to just kind of touch base on is what is normal and small and what could be an indicator of a much bigger problem. Pinholing because of age. Pinholing is essentially when the guys are putting grout into the tile, there is water mixed in with grout. What a pinhole is a little air bubble that forms in the grout joint itself, where water will be sitting. And this is during the mixing process and the installation process. Obviously, as the grout dries, these pinholes then become visible. A very easy fix. They can be filled, touched up, very, very minor issue. What can be a major issue is when you start to see deterioration of the grout from water chemistry or grout joints that just aren't filled properly. And again, this is installation defects versus environmental wear. And obviously when regrouting is insufficient. And when I say regrouting, I'm not talking about skimming a little bit of grout on top of a surface. Skimming a little bit of grout on top of a surface is something that you could do with a pinhole. But you cannot regrout when you've got something that was installed wrong. At that point, regrouting, you're beyond that. At that point, you're looking at probably replacing the tile, because in order to regrout a tile or a coping properly, you need to thoroughly grind out the grout joint itself to make sure that you are going to get ample coverage and fill that joint. So we'll look at a couple of pictures here. So right here, this is just a little shrinkage crack. Whereas you can see here, this grout, and you can even see on the surface of the tile here, and there's even some of this on this one here, but you can see on the surface of the tile, there's almost a film on this tile. And you can see that it looks like the grout itself is beginning to fall apart. This is an indication, and this was not an improperly filled grout joint. This was bad water chemistry just eating away at cement. Cement is not indestructible. As much as people want to believe cement is very, very strong, it is, but when it has outside forces introduced into it, like bad water chemistry, I don't care how great of a grout you put in there, it can be completely destroyed by the chemistry of the water. Some more pictures here. You can see here, this was a completed job. These are some pinholes in the grout. You can see just little pinholes. They're little air pockets that formed when the grout was originally done. And these can be touched up and what I would call regrouted, where you're just filling that little pinhole. Calcium deposits. In the videos that I showed in the beginning, I talked about calcium deposits and delamination. So obviously before we drained the pool, there were calcium deposits on the wall. Once we drained the pool, we found that those calcium deposits were a much bigger issue. This was the pool before draining. You can see these little calcium deposits followed by what looks like almost a blister in the floor. You can see that little calcium deposit there on the wall here. What a calcium deposit or a calcium nodule is, and here's an up-close photo of a nodule and a deposit. You have two different types. One that is going to form from basically a weakened surface, and a weakened surface can be caused by water chemistry. It can also be caused by improper installation. It can start like this, where there's no delamination present, but continued issues with water chemistry, or if there is an underlying installation problem, it will turn into a delamination or a non-bond. And that's where in this photo here, you're starting to see the delamination actually happen. As with the delamination and the nodules, you may also see things like surface etching, material breakdown. You can see dead zones in circulation. And slip resistance versus degradation. Slip resistance is something you're going to have in a product that was spec'd for the job, versus degradation is actually the material falling apart or installed improperly and it's just overly rough. You can see here's a couple of photos of material that is actually deteriorating from water chemistry and dead zones within circulation. You can see really when they built this pool, there should have been return in this area. That would be like a jet in the wall to continue to produce circulation in these areas which might not normally get water flowing through them. This kind of problem can cause bad water chemistry. It can make the pool cloudy. It can cause algae blooms, etc. All of the things that we don't want. Other things to look at, and this is going to be from a swimming standpoint. So if your residents are complaining that the water is feeling sticky, that's typically an indication of a problem. Versus pool water should feel silky and soft on your skin, but when the water chemistry is off, it will begin to feel almost tacky. Oops. So again, silky water is soft, smooth, slippery on your skin, usually means you have properly balanced water chemistry. Sticky water can be an indication of high total dissolved solids, high cyanuric acid, high calcium. Again, all things that are found with poor water chemistry on the job. For those of you that don't know what total dissolved solids are, here's just a little graphic image to kind of show you as we mix the water or the sugar into the water, the sugar will dissolve. But eventually the water itself will stop dissolving the sugar when it's got too many solids that it's trying to dissolve. And eventually those solids will begin to come out of solution, whether it be calcium formation or something else. This is kind of going over what I was just talking about, how high TDS can impact pool water chemistry. Ultimately, if there's high TDS in the pool water, the chlorine itself is going to act as a Pac-Man, and it's going to look at these additional undissolved solids in the pool, and it will attack those first before attacking things like bacteria and other things that we don't want in the pool. Again, can make the water feel sticky, makes it hard to calculate proper water chemistry. It can increase corrosion potential depending on what it is that's not dissolving. And at the same time, it can make the water very cloudy and hard to clear. Understanding the root cause versus symptom repairs. This is kind of what I was referring to when I was going through the pool that had the cracks in the floor and the wall, and this leak detection company that was coming out making these constant repairs year over year over year, looking at the symptoms only versus trying to figure out. And I have to imagine that the first person that did a crack repair on this pool, because you have to grind these cracks out, saw how thin the shell was. And I would hope that they, would have noticed this and said something in the beginning, but obviously they didn't. But if it's not being diagnosed properly, then the right solution's never going to be brought up. So I would always ask questions, especially if somebody's coming out to do a repair. What do you think caused this problem? And then, depending on the type of company you're working with, if it's a leak detection company versus a construction company, a leak detection company may just give you a small estimate for a repair, but it may be worthwhile getting an additional person to weigh in, getting an expert in the field to come and take a look at the problem and ask those questions. Hey, what's actually going on here? Do we have a bigger problem? And for those of you that are working on budgets, this is the kind of stuff that you need to know so that you can plan and you can make sure these repairs are done. Because obviously, the weight of these communities is on you CAMs. And when things are not done or not caught, the boards are going to come back to you and ask you why. So making sure you've got that person in your corner is extremely important. So we're going to dive into the evaluation. I know looks like we're kind of getting over on time here.
If you're okay, let me go through some questions first because, we know these evaluations are so difficult, but at the same time, we can get through it pretty fast. We had a question about services of Azure. Do you guys do lagoons also?
Is it like a lake, a community lake, like a retention lake?
I'll have Fran put into the chat to qualify that. Do you recommend saltwater pools?
So yes and no. And it really depends on why the client is asking for saltwater pools. Saltwater pools can be amazing. The water feels soft. You're less likely to have a buildup of chloramines in the pool. Chloramines are combined chlorine. That is chlorine that is not effective for killing bacteria. What we want is free chlorine in the pool. And salt systems are continuously producing chlorine in the pool. The difference is, and why I'm always hesitant to recommend saltwater pools for commercial, is these communities are already required to have both a chlorine dispenser and an acid dispenser on the pool. So what a saltwater pool would produce for them at that point would only be softer water. We're not actually solving a problem unless, there's just an issue with maybe they've got a lot of very people with very sensitive skin swimming in the pool. Maybe it's an elderly community or a retirement home or something like that. I would recommend that for those clients. But I would say 90% of the communities out there, I would say chlorine is just fine. Because at the end of the day, a saltwater pool is still a chlorine pool. The only difference is you're manufacturing the chlorine on site and you have the benefit of the saltwater cell, which acts almost as a water softener for the pool.
Awesome. Okay, clarification on the lagoon. It is a man-made 20,000 gallon lagoon.
So I'm just going to make an assumption that it is a concrete shell that was put in place very similar to a swimming pool. Yes, as long as it is a concrete shell in the ground, it is still a swimming pool. In fact, the municipalities, when it comes to permitting those, you are actually pulling a swimming pool permit. And yes, we would work on those.
Okay, great. How did you discover that the rebar was not encased in concrete? Destructive testing or ground penetrating radar X-ray?
We did destructive testing on that job. During the pool shell inspection, we as part of what we had spoke to the client about in the beginning, we were going to open up all of those areas of repair and dive into why.
Okay, next, very informative from Joanne S. Thank you, Joanne. Okay, let's go through the evaluation, and I'm going to open up the chat so everyone can put, oh wait, one quick second. Do you repair concrete pool decks?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm going to open the chat up so everyone can put into the chat, not the Q&A, the answers to the evaluation. Let's go ahead.
Oh, question 1. What type of crack is most concerning structurally?
Boop, boop, boop. Okay, here we go. Everyone's waking up. No, just kidding. People said very informative, so this is good. Okay, C's, some A's. Yep, C's, some A's. Which one is it?
A wide diagonal crack immediately would be the most concerning structurally. I see a lot of people putting A. A hairline crack is something that I would keep an eye on. That would be what I would call a spider crack. It's definitely something that you would want to look to see if is a calcium nodule forming. You know, and even is it leaking? Am I losing water through this crack? Because again, depending on the type of finish that you have, it may be more visible that you have a spider crack in the finish. Most of the finishes that we install have a large pebble aggregate, which tends to hide those spider cracks. And not hide like we're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, but spider cracking is normal in concrete. And so these finish manufacturers have made different products to make them less visible because they don't want people panicking that there's problems. Again, if a hairline crack was to begin opening up or presenting something like calcium, then I would be concerned.
Before you go, or we can stay right here, but I just want to make sure all questions get answered. Also, there was a question that popped into the Q&A. Do you think the shape of the spa determines cleanliness? I have never heard that question before, so interesting.
The shaping of the spa, I mean, I'm going to assume that they mean when it's originally constructed. Sure, absolutely. Shaping of the spa, shaping of the pool, the design of the pool. There are a lot of amazing designers out there that don't put a lot of thought into how the pool can be maintained down the road.
Right.
I don't see that often in a commercial environment, but I see it all the time in residential. You know, you will get these extremely modern pools that don't give you the ability to brush all areas of the pool or visibly see all areas of the pool. And as beautiful as they are a big pain to maintain. And ultimately, you know, you're going to go through some service guys on those pools.
They followed up saying, asking because at my building, the board of directors thinks the square spa will be cleaner.
If we're just talking square versus round, no, I would say it doesn't really make a difference. You know, square spas can tend to hold dirt in the corner, but every service technician out there should have what's called a spa wand, which is essentially a small handheld vacuum that can vacuum that stuff out. But if they're brushing and doing that, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Everyone has already put in B. They're like, B.
yeah. Improper water chemistry. And I will say that this has to specifically do with tile that is below water. Okay, improper water chemistry can cause pinholing, but I would say it's more degradation and etching of the grout itself. If the water becomes acidic or basic, it can begin to break down the material.
Okay. All right.
Calcium deposits typically indicate.
And everyone's pretty unanimous. Yes,
Yep.
unanimous. Well, we had a C in there, but mostly B's.
Yeah, water imbalance. A calcium deposit is typically an indicator of water imbalance, specifically that the Langmuir saturation index is off. And the Langmuir saturation index is a method of measurement that we use to test the health of the water. Water is always looking to find balance. One of the things that it needs to find balance is calcium. And if it does not have enough calcium in it, it will look for the nearest source, which the nearest source in a swimming pool is going to be anything containing cement. Rough pool surfaces often indicate.
And they're coming through as all D. Oh, we had one B in there.
All
Go
right.
ahead. Yeah.
So surface breakdown is the answer. There are actually several answers to this question. Surface breakdown is one of them. Rough surface can also be an indicator of poor water chemistry. If the water chemistry is off to a point where calcium crystals will begin forming on the surface can become very rough and actually cut the feet of the swimmers swimming in it. The person that answered B, normal wear, I would say normal wear maybe if the pool was 20 years old, because at that point in time, we're beyond what I would call the usable life of that swimming pool surface. Most swimming pool manufacturers offer a 5-year warranty on commercial swimming pool surfaces. Residential, the typical warranty is 10 years, although there are some manufacturers that you have to become an approved applicator for that will offer a lifetime warranty on that surface. Nobody offers a lifetime warranty on commercial surfaces because of the number of people swimming in the pool and the amount of chemicals that are getting pumped in on a daily basis. Sticky water feel may suggest.
It's time to get a new maintenance person. Just kidding. Yeah, we'll have contact information at the end for sure. C's are coming through, Eddie.
Okay. Yes, high TDS or an imbalance in the water chemistry is the correct answer. If the water feels sticky, something's wrong. Definitely, and I always recommend to all of our clients, it's worthwhile testing your own water and bringing it to a pool store once a month. Pool companies are great, but a lot of times you're relying on the word of somebody that's getting paid between $15 and $20 an hour, that is getting paid based on the number of pools that they can service in a given day. So that being said, time is money for those guys. So as great as I hope everybody is in taking care of the pool, it's a big investment and you should be looking at it behind everybody else.
Well said. Well said.
Dead zones in circulation lead to.
And this kind of goes into the shape, like
Yes.
some, yeah. Because
Yep.
I've seen it in my home pool. If the nozzle moves just a little bit, the circulation just it dramatically changes. And
Can completely
people
change.
that are lame, yeah, people that are laymen don't think about that stuff.
Yep.
Or at least I don't. C's.
Yeah. Localized damage. Yes. Poor water circulation, if left unchecked, not corrected, can lead to damage down the road. Ultimately, if you're getting algae blooms in the same area of the pool and they're having to constantly treat it with a concentrated chemical, it's going to wear down the finish in that area, which will cause damage. Cosmetic cracks typically
Okay, we got some conflicting responses on this one.
Yeah, I see that. All right. Most of the time, cosmetic cracking is surface level only. I will say, again, just because they're surface level only doesn't mean you shouldn't keep an eye on it. Any kind of crack that is visible enough to draw your eye is something that you should look at. It's not always an indicator of a problem, but it could be. So again, it doesn't mean that, you need to call your pool guy and demand answers about what's going on in the pool, but keep an eye on it. And I would bring it up and I would just say, hey, I noticed this. Is this anything you're concerned about? And just get their take on it. And if your service guy is not a construction company and he is just a service company, get an expert in there to take a look. I do recommend to all of our clients that you do leak detections at least annually. You never know what they're going to find. You may actually be losing water and not know it. And then obviously hiring the right experts to come out and take a look at the pool would be a huge benefit, especially if you're in budgetary times and you're looking at the projects that the community is going to have coming up. Getting somebody to come out and give you a unbiased diagnosis of the pool and taking a look at the overall health of the pool is extremely important. Calcium scaling.
Yeah, add that to your budget for
Yes.
sure. Annual at the minimum, add it to the budget, explain to your board members that you're a great CAM and you're taking these courses on a regular basis and an industry professional suggested it, and it'll save a lot of money in the long run.
Yes.
Okay.
IPH levels. I will say there was another correct answer on that list. Cold water, surprisingly enough, can cause scaling if the environment is correct. I talked about the Langmuir saturation index earlier. By no means am I a chemist, but I have done a lot of research and study in this field. And we annually attend additional continued education courses ourselves. This is one of the areas that we do attend annually. And if the chemistry environment is meeting, if the stars are aligned in the chemistry environment and you get a cold water flash, you can actually produce scale in a swimming pool.
So much to everything, isn't there?
Yes. The best first step before repairs is
Okay.
everybody watched my presentation.
Oh, I see a few C's, but mainly B's.
Yes. So draining the pool would be after doing a bit more investigation on the project. Absolutely. Draining the pool would be step 2. Once you've indicated that there is a major problem, it may require draining the pool to figure out exactly what's going on. I know nobody wants to drain their community pools to do this kind of stuff. It's a crappy thing to put the community through, but it may be necessary to figure out exactly what's going on. Otherwise, what you're looking at is opening a giant can of worms. You could start a project and be faced with change order after change order after change order. Whereas if you were to drain a pool and have the pool inspected while empty, or even if it was to the point where you needed destructive testing, destructive testing areas could be patched, could be repaired, and allowed for budgets and estimates to be put in front of you and the board to put this project off down the road. Obviously, if it's a major, major issue, that may not be an option, but, you hope that you're catching some of these things before that happens. Yeah, ultimately, you want to identify the root cause of what's going on.
Someone put in B as they saw the B screen. That would be me. Just kidding. Okay, final question here.
Yep. CAMs should act as
okay. Again, we've got some of these that have multiple options that people are responding on. But everybody will pass. I think Eddie will, Professor Eddie will give the green light probably. We'll see. We'll see.
Obviously, this answer could be specific to individual communities, but ultimately, I would say that gatekeepers is the correct answer. You're the first line of defense for the community, typically. Again, you may have a unique scenario in your community, but typically you're reaching out to the vendors, getting RFPs, etc. You're the first line of defense.
Do you want me to add the startup instructions into the chat?
We can. I didn't really get a chance to go through that. I didn't have a slide for that today.
Yeah. But
If
it's good info.
It is good info. What Diane is talking about is the startup procedure. That would be the water balancing procedure that is recommended by the NPC, which is the National Plasters Council. They are the governing body for the pool interior finishes. That would be the bottoms that go into these swimming pools. The NPC has got a lot of great information on their website. Startup instructions are the method that they recommend to balance and start up pool water during the 28-day period following the filling of the swimming pool.
And I put it into the chat. I also put their contact information, a link to their YouTube channel, which has a lot of great videos on there. And you could take a picture of the screen here to contact. Eddie, will you go over your service areas? We've got a question in here from Johnny P. Do you have a local rep in Miami, Florida?
So currently we service Southwest Florida. We will do commercial pool work, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Naples, Bonita Springs, Estero, Marco Island, Fort Myers Beach, and Bonita Beach areas. We do not have anybody currently in Miami. We are working on a program right now that we hope to roll out here after the first of the year to partner with CAMs to give them that additional support, looking at commercial swimming pools, doing inspections, leak detections, etc., working on budgets, RFPs, and ultimately, if the project required it, we would provide management service of the project.
I think it's so important to have a third party involved. There's so much to it, and it's such an expensive investment. And I think all CAMs can understand that construction projects, even if you've done it before, each time you do a new construction project, there's new rules, there's new ways of verifying contractors, there's new things happening every day. And so having an advocate is such a huge thing. I'm excited for your team for that. Also, Eddie is involved again with the Florida Swimming Pool Association and a number of industry associations. So Johnny, maybe reach out to Eddie, and Eddie, if you had a contact in the area that you know, please, would you offer that to them as well? So guys, yeah, if we don't have any more questions, we'll let Eddie get back to business today. Again, the contact information is in the chat. The startup instructions are also in the chat. You can download those if you scroll over them and then hit the three little buttons. You should be able to download and or take a picture of this screen. Also, this is videotaped, so this will also be in the past courses curriculum, so that you can share with board members and fellow CAMs. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you soon. Have a good day.